Did he send you an email? It was regarding like a safety statement or something like that. I didn't know if that's possible at this point.
That could be tricky.
Yeah, I figured. I told him,
He could make it a St. Patrick's Day walk and be much easier.
he would be open to that, I think. Yeah, I would approach that. He would totally be open.
Okay, we are live. Good evening and welcome everybody to the City Council Workshop. Today is Monday, February 12th. Happy birthday, Bangor. 190 years today. We don't look a day over 185. Around the table tonight, we have Councillor Leonard, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Tremble, Councillor Yakabaga, Councillor Fish. I am Council Chair Pelletier. And our first item on the agenda tonight is a presentation of the Parks and Rec feasibility studies, Recreation Center and Sawyer Ice Arena report. So I will turn it over to our Parks and Rec director.
Thank you. Good evening. Certainly conversation. We're excited to continue and have with you here this evening. As some of you may know, but as a quick refresher on the history of how we got here tonight and why we're having some of the discussion that we're having tonight. During the city's comp plan, as well as our recently concluded master plan, was identified to conduct a feasibility study to either renovate or replace the Parks and Recreation Center as well as Sawyer Arena. In September of 2022, we indeed asked for RFPs, and we, through the process, contracted with Barry Dunn to complete that feasibility study. So we did a combined study for both Sawyer Arena and the Parks and Rec Center. They have been put together a team from CHA Architects, McLaughlin Management Design. McLaughlin Management Design is the ice arena component of their team, and CHA Architects assisted them with the rec center and site design. And we started that process in March of 2023. Subsequent to that, they've gone through quite a process of both community engagement and market analysis, which they're going to discuss with you here shortly. And we developed some goals as part of that process. And certainly through that goal setting process and the studies that they're going to talk to you about, arrived at some concepts we briefly talked about in a workshop back in November, a combined school and city council workshop. And from that, we're here to present to you tonight details of the report that they have put together. They'll be presenting a slide presentation for you. Before I continue, I certainly would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the staff that we have here tonight, both our Assistant Director, Deb Jandro, as well as our Sawyer Arena Supervisor, Joe Nelson. And we're also joined by members of our Parks, Recreation, and Harbor Advisory Committee. So with that introduction, I'm going to introduce the team from Barry Dunn and see where we're at in their portion. I think we're here as part of the process, and they'll go through with you some of the things that they worked on to get us to the point that we're going to discuss with you tonight. I did bring copies if you want, or we can follow along with the screen. And with that, I'm going to introduce Elsa Fisher from Barry Dunn. She'll introduce the other two members of the team here this evening.
Thank you very much, Tracy.
And Tom,
Yeah, come on up, Tom.
I'm going to stay. Yep,
You're driving.
I'm driving. This is not driverless, so.
So we very much appreciate the opportunity to work on this feasibility study and to present to you tonight. My name is Elsa Fisher. I was the project manager for this project. Barry Dunn is the lead consulting team, and we partnered with CHA, and Carl Lebo is with us tonight from CHA. His teammate Michael was not able to be here, but he'll be presenting both the architect piece and the land piece. And Tom Deal from Barry Dunn is also here with us tonight, and he did the pro forma work for the facility that we'll end up discussing tonight. So we divided your project into a process, and this is the process. I just want you to understand where we've where we've been since we started. So we started with a market study. We wanted to learn about your demographics, who lived in the community. We wanted to study some similar providers in the area to learn what they're doing and how successful they are. And that information from the similar providers helped Tom with his pro forma. We looked at park and recreation trends. So what's going on in indoor ice, what's going on in indoor community centers, not only who's using these facilities, but what are they doing inside of them? And that was kind of across the country. So national trends. Then we looked at some Placer AI mobility data. This is a new tool that we're using that leverages existing telephone cell data and tracks how many people are coming, when they're coming, how long they're staying, where they are before and where they are after. And some people are a little bit shocked by that information. They don't keep any personal data, no names, no information on where people live, but it can really show you in a facility usage, which we thought was important for your facilities. So after we did the market study, then we engaged in quite a bit of community conversation. We had some focus groups, we had some stakeholder meetings. We had an online website where we asked the community, what do you want in a new facility, and what programs do you want to see, and what do you want in a new ice center, and what programs do you want to see, and do you want the facilities on one site or do you want them separate, and which facility is more of a priority for you and your family, just to get an understanding of what people were looking for in terms of indoor recreation. And then we held 2 public meetings at the recreation center as another means for people to provide input. So then at the end of the engagement, we sat down as a team, we looked at everything that we had learned, and we came up with what we felt were the desired facilities based on the engagement. The desired facility was 1 facility. People wanted 2 sheets of ice. They wanted 3 gyms. The list of things that people talked about are there. Indoor track, that comes up in probably every facility we study. Everywhere people want an opportunity to be able to walk or run, whether it's too cold outside or too hot outside. Childcare, multipurpose space, office spaces. So we determined, what is it that people want before we started looking at building layout. The other thing that we did at that point is look at the existing conditions of the 2 facilities. So our architects looked at not only the Park and Rec Center, but they looked at Sawyer Ice Arena. And Carl will talk a little bit more about that. Our third partner on the team, McLaughlin, he is an ice refrigeration expert. So he's the one who did the study of the ground underneath your existing ice arena to see could it handle a larger facility, a renovated facility. And Carl will talk about that in a minute. Then the next step was looking at sites, and we looked at 6 municipally owned sites and looked at the pros and cons of each, knowing that we were looking at 1 facility with both components. So then Carl and his team worked on facility concepts that we went back and forth with the staff on, what worked, what was missing. It was back and forth for probably, I don't know, about 6 weeks, just working on the facility and the site. And then from there, once we had agreed upon the components, then Carl and his team worked on the cost of those spaces to build. And at that point, Tom worked on the pro forma. What does it cost to operate? So how much money can you generate from programs and services? And what do these facilities cost to operate? And then at the final phase was looking at some options for implementation. So potentially phasing the project. So you can flip to the next slide, and Carl's going to talk a little bit about the existing conditions that we found in our review.
Yeah, so we've been working with McLaughlin for probably all of our ice sheets. And so, they basically are kind of a leader in the industry, and they reviewed the existing Sawyer Arena. The Sawyer Arena was built as an open arena in 1980. It didn't really have a full subsurface removal and reconstruction of what we would typically see today. the ground source radar suggests that there's quite a lot of stuff still in the ground there. And that's what's causing the unevenness of the ice sheet and the heaving. And then we posed the question of, okay, could you remove the ice sheet, rebuild it? And I think the subsurface investigation suggested that's not really an option either, of replacement of that ice sheet. Typically, an ice sheet, this is made with mats. Right now, typically it's done with tubes. There's a heated component below this to avoid the permafrost. And so none of that really exists in the current condition. It was also an outdoor arena that then had a roof and sides put on it. So it is not insulated. So it's generally in fairly rough shape. And the heating is kind of rough on both the dashboards as well as the external skin. There were some nice locker rooms added recently, fairly recently. But it's an aging facility that's beyond its lifespan. The Parks and Recreation Center, we took a look at that. That is also an old armory building reused. I think it looks and it's got a storage and maintenance component that is roughly mostly half of the building. The recreation component is about 26,000 square feet. It has accessibility issues. It is again built over time. There's no accessibility to the lower level. There's a lift, and then it's aged and out of its useful lifespan. So what we looked at as we said was there were 6 sites that we looked at that were municipally owned. We looked at the existing rec site, we looked at the existing Sawyer site, and then a variety of other ones. There's a site on Griffin Road, which was 41 acres. It's relatively flat, and it allowed for the really basically the full program, feasible, with actually other components added to the program. So it really looked like the one site that really had all the options. When we looked at the other ones, they were either too small, the topography was rough, and we couldn't fit the full program on it. This here is basically the plan diagram that was developed, and we've got this is based on Griffin Road site. We've got parking for about 480 cars, and then we also have a drop off at each one of the components. In the recreational center, we actually have 2 drop offs. You see the one to the left is really for childcare use, and then the main drop off is for the shared lobby between the skating center and the recreation center. One of the other items is that the hope was to have this used as kind of one facility, but they do have competing schedules, and sometimes one would be open when the other is not. So we do have the ability to close one building, but still have a main central lobby, should that occur in a scheduling process. As we look through the program, generally, it's a 3-court gymnasium, and it has a jogging track around the top, walking track on the second level. That is actually the only component on the second level. What we're trying to do is keep this all as one floor to keep it cost effective, and use pre-engineered structures for some of the long span spaces to also work in that cost effective range. So what you see moving really from left to right on this sheet is the blue is kind of supports, the darker blue is support and multi-purpose spaces, the large span spaces, the gymnasium. Yellow is circulation and lobby. Then as we start to move toward the middle of the picture, you see we have a 2-sheet ice with a central core of locker rooms. Above that, we do have media and other multi-purpose rooms, and that is also the only other double-story space in there, because we're really trying to keep this as most cost-effective as we can. It does on the front then have an administration wing, and you can see that the lower arena is about 750 seats, and then the upper arena is at around 250 seats. Both of these sheets of ice are 85 by 200. And then they can also, with configured like this with the central core, share the Zamboni area toward the right side. And then the next building, which is in the kind of a mauve color, is the municipal building, storage and maintenance, and it's got a small kind of front area in the toward the front that is administrative.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this is not coming through on Zoom or the live stream. Maybe
What do you need?
yeah, maybe just get out and back into it. It's on a much older slide for some reason. Yeah, it's like frozen. See how on the computer it's, oh, Cody might be doing something behind the scenes now.
So talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. I'll let him work on the backside for a minute.
Kansas City, of course. Is this the first slide? Kansas City fan.
Yeah, we don't. Everyone.
Did the other slide on the live stream, or? If I understood her correctly, it appears that we're either like,
We're still back at the,
we're either, it looks
They're
like
on
we're.
the fifth slide, it says she's on the fifth slide, what I just got from Ann.
We're frozen on the ones on the laptop.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Need me to get up?
So this is the slide you're on, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
slide 10.
My hip was wrong.
No, it's not.
Probably, yeah, because it came to you and I. Somehow Courtney got it for like, she beat us better than.
Yeah, Cody, something weird's going on, because now Zoom is showing the diagram that you were just on.
Yeah.
Oh, that was all practice.
I get it right. I get it right the next time. Yeah.
You're flowing right along.
I think the audio was fine, just the video.
It's like one of the old movies where the audio doesn't line up, right? There you go.
Oh,
That's better, Cody, now it's the same. Yeah, I'm not sitting around.
There we go.
I think freedom is far enough away.
It's here, it's
It's
doing
got
it.
two screens, I think, happening.
Yeah. So I need to get this actual computer setting.
Yeah. Yeah, you think?
Decided to change display settings. Now that's.
I don't either. It's just more and more complicated.
Yes.
Yes, always, always.
Yes. You can find your slide, you should be all set now.
Thank you.
Actually, We were on,
Oh my gosh, you're adding slides.
hey Cody. Oh,
We were on 10.
right. I
If you
mean,
click on, if it lets you.
There you go.
And
That's
then
good.
click this button here, it should, well,
Cody doing it?
nope, not yet. Yeah, that one, it'll go into slideshow. There you go.
Boom.
Oh, do we want to recap on the other or we good?
Let's keep going.
Okay, so what you see here is, this is the Griffin Road site.
Thank you.
Griffin Road is to the plan south or the lower part of this drawing. And the actually, is it Hudson College?
Hudson University.
Hudson University is the main axis, where so it's a four-way intersection, right there. You come into the facility and as we talked about before, there were the drop off for childcare, and a playground over to the left of the site. There's the recreation center in the center of the site. Then there's the lobby and administration wings that are radiated off of the main lobby space. And then the two ice sheets, the school maintenance and city maintenance and storage building, with its yard, tucked in the back. And then we have the option also of a two-story health and community services building that could be phased in the main program as well with its own drop-off. You see also, the site development here is we have two tennis courts. We have, I think we have 6 to 8 pickleball courts and then 2 recreational fields with an overlay of a large, performance, soccer field, on that. One of the other things that this orientation allowed us to do is with the 1-story with the large span roofs, we have a lot of ability for solar collection, and that's what's dotted in on those south facing roofs is kind of a large solar farm, that will help offset some of the maintenance on the building. So as we look at the projected costs, we looked at the recreation center. That program is based on a roughly 72,000 square foot building. We have construction costs. We used a range. And then soft costs, typically for this kind of construction type is around 30% of the construction costs. And those really are fees as well as FF&E, furniture, equipment, and all the stuff that goes inside of the building. And so that is what that number is. And basically you can see the total is around the, I should need my glasses for that one. Is around 19 to 20 million. The skating center is a 2-sheet piece of ice, so it's around 92,000 square feet. Again, this has less FF&E because everything's part and parcel of the building. So the dasher boards, the Zambonis are integrated with the construction costs. So that's why its costs are slightly less. And we're looking at a total of about 21 million to 22 million for the skating center. The maintenance building is around 42,000 square feet. Again, reduced soft costs. And this really is a 1-story structure with a pre-engineered building behind it. So its construction range is significantly less than the longer span spaces for the rec and ice. But we're looking at kind of an $8 million facility for that. And then the Health and Human Services is roughly 14,000 square feet. We're thinking this building probably is slightly different in that it could be a 2-story building. The full way, it's a smaller footprint, and the building program lends itself a little more to that type of program. So when we look at general site work, we're looking at basically general site work is the parking. We've got demolition and earthwork. That site is actually pretty nice and clear. Site utilities, and then playground. And then that's how we divvied it up. And you can see the total budgeted probable cost is anywhere from 4.3 to 5.6. And then we also have future amenities that we could add, which would we were thinking that as we phase this project, or there's multiple ways to phase this project, as you saw, it was kind of linearly laid out from an east to west. And so, the multipurpose fields could be phased later, as could be the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, and some of the other amenities. One of the other thoughts was, it was kind of a walking trail around the entire site that could also have exercise stations and pods, that just kind of activates the perimeter of the site. So what we're looking at for a phase one project cost, which includes basically the rec center, the ice sheet, and the maintenance building, as well as that front parking lot, but reduces the site amenities to try to get the price a little more in line. And we're looking at something that's around 52 to 56 million total project cost. And then again, we have the ability to add on these future elements in the future. And actually that we still don't have full site utilization on that 41 acres. So there is still some additional site left over.
All right, so I took everything we learned up to this point, the diagrams and the entire site, and I worked to help understand how much it would cost to operate the facility and what type of revenue you could bring in to offset it and how it could function. I spent a lot of time with the staff and with our own team looking at all of that. If you go to the next slide. So I developed a staffing plan for the recreation center and the ice rink. And I, vetted all of that with the city staff. We did everything from full-time positions to part-time positions, everything that would occur that would need to be operated. And we did also work in all of the childcare employees and staffing and all of that. If you go to the next slide, we came up with what the facility hours would be. We looked at a 50-week operation. Monday through Sunday it was open. Then we looked at all the opportunities for revenue, things like court rentals, ice rentals, field rentals, indoor playground rentals, the different leagues and programs the city could operate. And we did also take into account the childcare programming and what is occurring in the way of childcare. Then we looked at special events as well. Go to the next slide. So I took all of that and I developed what we call a 1-year summary. You can see that from expenses, I have staffing. I have contractual services. Those are things like your utilities, your building maintenance, your housekeeping, whether it was internal or outsourced, your HVAC, everything that it would take to operate the facility. And we also included commodities. Those are what you need for the housekeeping, what you need for the restrooms, everything to operate the facility. And then we looked at all the different revenue. We looked at revenue from the recreation center. We looked at revenue from the ice, the outdoor, childcare, customer services. We have many more detailed sheets on how that was all sorted out. And we had multiple meetings with city staff, reviewed through all of that, made sure that it was both accurate and something they were comfortable with. It is probably on the conservative side as far as the revenue goes and pretty realistic on the expense side, because we don't want you to be shocked if something was built and then it's totally different. And then we also did what we call a 5-year pro forma. The way this pro forma is laid out, it's basically increasing the cost of expenses and revenue every year by a percentage. What it does not show is you having more and more activity every year, because we just wanted to be conservative. But again, our anticipation is that year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are very accurate expenses. But your revenues, there would be the possibility that they could increase each year as more and more things occur and as the city is more comfortable with operating the facility. But we just try to, again, set it up for this is realistic, not what might happen.
So again, project phasing, I think what we touched on this earlier, but the thought is that we have the recreation center that with the childcare component, and then we have the 2 sheets of ice. And then the school maintenance and city maintenance and storage shed. And then the associated infrastructure with the parking and the drop off for those 3 components. And then in the future, we have the ability to add the Health and Human Services building along with some of the other site components. And those would be the tennis courts, the pickleball courts, and then the larger two field complex with a 1 field overlay. And again, this is how it might lay out. And you can see that, you know, that perimeter trail is kind of the ghosty looking thing that is on the top of the sheet. But it really could be something pretty spectacular.
So next steps for Bangor, confirm the site, go through your pre-design phase. You'll need to hire, obviously, a consultant. These are draft conceptual plans, but you'll need somebody to create construction drawings and construction documents. Then you would go out for construction and obviously have a groundbreaking. If the stars were to align for Bangor, those would be your next steps. And with that, we want to open it up to questions. Counselor Trumbull.
Well, I've got a number. I mean, first of all, I mean, it's a big price, a big dollar value. But when we look at those positions that you've got in the rec center budget, does that include, are those some of the current positions that we still have and you've just put them into that budget? How many new positions is this?
Yes, we did look at the existing positions and then we also have some money that in that performer that shows that you're already spending money on those
Right.
positions, so it's accounted for.
Okay,
So what we just talked about the other day was we could work to develop what we call a delta. Remember, we talked about that where it's showing what are you currently doing,
exactly.
what the new situation is gonna be. So how much more operationally would all of this cost you? And also, what would you get for all of that?
And just some other things that'd be helpful as we move forward. One, you said, that, you know, confirm the site. I haven't looked at the handout, but what you gave us tonight just shows the site that you saw. You looked at 6 sites. So it might be helpful for the people that have to make the decision to see the other sites, so we know if this is a site we want, or if there's another site we want. And I know when you met with the groups, people preferred to have one site. What is the advantage to having ice in the other facility? Why would you want ice where the other facilities are located?
From an operational standpoint, it's gonna save you money because it can be the same management group. It can be the same people there. The other thing is when people go to use the facility, if you have that all in one facility, you have a very good opportunity where someone is coming because their child is in an ice program. And while they're in an ice program, those people would then use the things that are in the recreation center as opposed to having, like, how many times have we all taken our child or someone in our family somewhere and everybody else has to wait? This would allow the opportunity that a parent might be taking a yoga class while a child is doing an ice program, while another person in the family is, you know, playing basketball, or someone's at childcare. It's that situation, those synergies. And also, again, from the operational standpoint, it's less expensive and more efficient to have all of your facilities together. The same thing is when you look to later on add the fields, if those were to happen, it's just gonna make it a more attractive site to go to. And again, we've laid it out so that the staff that would be operating the building could also operate the fields.
I think there's also some construction synergies that your infrastructure for one site versus bringing infrastructure in for 2 sites, such as utilities, roadways, and improvements that way. So I think there's some savings in that as well.
Great questions.
Counselor Fournier?
Absolutely, I agree. I'm not shocked by the price at all. I think that's probably appropriate. It's gonna be really helpful to see what the operating costs are now.
Mm-hmm.
And you overlay that what it, all the maintenance that's currently being employed at Sawyer Arena now. I mean, there's gotta be a lot of capital costs there.
Well, that's the opportunity, I think,
Continuously
that
happening.
Tom referenced, is that going forward, we'll be able to have the opportunity to see how we're structured now and compare and contrast that to the proposal and the concept you have in front of you. One of the challenges, we're not structured currently necessarily for something like this, but certainly there's some opportunity to overlap and incorporate in what you have here in front of you this evening. So going forward, that's certainly some good information to have.
So the operating costs are running roughly, what, 1.7 to the negative? What's happening now with Parks and Rec?
We're about a 45 to 50% recovery department throughout the entire department. So our department is comprised of 10 divisions. Some do, as far as revenue, take in more revenue than others. But again, we're about a 45 to 50% recovery revenue to expense. So
I don't know what that means.
means that we're generating about half the revenue we need to offset our operating costs. So
Okay.
the ultimate and the city manager's former finance director may interrupt me here as I go along, but we recover about half of what it costs us to run. So the net effect
So
of
you're
taxpayer,
running right now at what?
as
You're
far as
running half at, so what are
What's
you?
the subsidies?
Exactly.
dollar amount off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember what, I don't want to give you an incorrect exact, but we're about half.
That's not what they're asking. What's the dollar amount?
Right.
Right.
They're asking for the dollar amount. So half isn't gonna
Right, I understand
help
what you're saying.
define the dollar amount.
We're in the neighborhood of, I
I'm
can't,
getting there.
yeah, she's.
I'm pulling it up.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I just want,
I,
I didn't want to rough it up.
just to disclose it,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all.
And if I could just add real quick, when we did our work, we just went and did this work first before we showed it, and we came up with the 45%, which is very close to the 45-50% you're now. So this is shown to be an operated
So that's helpful.
similar to the way that
Mhm.
Bangor, this isn't like all of a sudden everything's gotta get tipped upside down, you gotta change everything.
Right.
But if you did wanna make changes, and you did in this facility, those numbers can become better or worse
Right.
based
Okay.
on that philosophy.
That helps. Thank you.
Other counselors? Are there any ideas on, how we're gonna raise, if this was something we were interested in doing? I know we could probably sell the rec facility we have now, or is there anything profound that would, that you can think of that would help raise some of this money?
Right here tonight, I'm sure there's plenty of ideas out there, but nothing substantial, nothing concrete yet. This was the first step in the process to share with you all this evening. Once the conversation continues and we go down the path, those ideas will certainly come forward and we'll start to work on some of those ideas and concepts that might be possible.
I also have a couple of questions around budget and finance. When's the last time the city of Bangor undertook a project this expensive?
Cross Center,
Cross Center?
Cross Center, 10 years, well, so 12 years ago.
And so
I mean, it
that's,
started in a very similar manner.
sure. Sure. And how? I know that Cross Center operates is more than 45 or 50% in terms of recouping its own cost. But how would we finance something like this? So I'm thinking about my tax bill,
As you should.
and the tax bills of everyone else in the room, and wondering,
Yeah.
is this something that's financed as a bond? Does it happen in phases? Is it something that the taxpayers are paying
Yes,
all of immediately, or how is it stretched out? Just give us a sense of the logistics of how this works.
So I think there are a lot of options, and to Tracy's point, this is just kind of the kickoff. Is what we're trying to get a sense of, does the council, support sort of a one location? And if that's the case, then let's define where that location is, and then let's come back to you with a potential phasing plan. So I can sit here today and tell you that Sawyer Arena is not gonna last probably more than 5 years. So, well, you sniggered.
Absolutely. I agree.
Okay, yeah, so, instead of continuing to invest in a facility as to what was shared that doesn't have a stable foundation, maybe the ice facility, so. They've come up with a phase one. I think it's up to us to determine what our true phase one is. I think there are opportunities some opportunity. So for example, it's not unusual to see naming rights in ice arenas. It's not unusual to see naming rights on recreation facilities, on playgrounds. I think there's some opportunity there. I think we should also look at what we have retiring for debt in the coming years. And do we have any opportunity? And is this where the council would like to use that opportunity? So I think we have several avenues, but a lot of them, there will be bonding. There's no way to do this other than to bond it. And we can be very strategic about the discussions we have about how we may phase it, where we may relocate it, and how we will manage the debt so that it doesn't become an excessive, an additional burden on the taxpayers.
Thank you. I do think we have probably 5 minutes on this. I'm imagining there are a few folks in the room who came here for this discussion tonight. I'd like to take one, maybe 2 questions. Is there anyone with a burning question? Will you please state your name and tell us whether you're a resident of Bangor? Thank you.
Dominic Rizzo, resident of Bangor, and I just want to ask, has access been part of this process? Access in regard to the equity, the equity of getting to a place without a car? Should we include a price for a bike trail to connect there from downtown or around town, or the bus to travel to it till 10 p.m. at night, Monday, whatever the schedule is? I mean, it's very nice. I'm glad it's gonna be 400 and something parking spaces there. But what about, we do have issues with climate and all that, and can we consider how we're gonna get people, maybe like myself, or older adults, or young people, or maybe parents who can't bring their kids to it? They're working a job or two, and they can't get to, bring their child there. So that's my burning, I mean, this looks great. I love it. It looks wonderful, but that's my burning question.
Certainly can. We tried to, when we did some of the sites, one of the attributes of the site at Griffin Road, it's somewhat in the middle, geographically in the middle of the city. So everybody has the same distance to travel, but certainly on your points going forward, if there's other opportunities to include, certainly as we go along in the process, and include them.
Extend Kenduskeag Trail to Griffin, and then a sidewalk. We should be there should be sidewalks in that plan that we're looking at. We just redid part of Griffin, and I'm not quite sure we put sidewalks on that portion of Griffin. So, and that connects all the way down to Union. So it all would have kind of come together.
So there's some possibilities for sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Questions and points. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, I just want
Councilor Yakabaga.
to comment on this. Thank you for raising this question. I think focusing on strengthening our infrastructure, talking about the transit system is a big thing here. If we're investing millions of dollars in this facility, which we need, it proves we need, like talking about what do you call it? Sawyer Arena. I mean, in 5 years, going on with this project is gonna take years, like a year, 2, 3, I don't know. So it means we have to, right, at one point.
Yeah.
So we need to invest more in infrastructure. We need to invest more in our transit system to make this accessible. Besides the, impacts, maybe besides encouraging bike areas in our, or tracks in our town. So yeah, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
I concur.
Councilor Cornelius.
So if you're looking for some direction, I'm fine with having one location. I'm fine with this location.
We don't have all the say.
No, I know.
This is other group.
Yep.
To me, it's the operating cost.
Mhm.
I know if we're already running in the negative now, that's fine. As long as it's not gonna be an overburden.
Right.
Going forward. So,
So we'll come
Thank
back
you.
with some additional
Yep.
information, and that will help, and maybe we can include some of that basic information as they work to finalize the report, feasibility report in itself. And then we'll come back, but we do need to kick off the conversation, and this was our way to do that.
I have a quick question, please.
Yes.
Talking about equity, I hope there will be opportunities similar to what we have now to support families.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Appreciate the
very much.
opportunity.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have a presentation from Bangor Water District.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm lost.
We don't have a water district presentation, do we?
We don't.
Trying to avoid those technical.
I know it's. I didn't even read the whole message. I know
Yeah, so you'll.
No, I.
And it should be.
This facility is right on the city and towards the kitchens.
Yeah.
Courtney, it's this button, right? Down?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, so good evening and thank you for having us. I did want to apologize that we weren't able to get in front of you before that it hit the papers and the customer letter got out. So my name is Holly Silva. I'm the finance manager with the Water District, and I have with me Mary Bork, who is our district engineer. So I'm just going to start by going over the financial aspects of our rate increase, and then Mary's going to get to go over the interesting stuff. Maybe. There we go. So to begin with, why do we need an increase? Well, additional revenues are needed to keep up with inflationary costs, recent revenue losses, and to help fund our renewal of our aging water infrastructure in the form of capital improvement investments. So while inflation's flattening out, we're still kind of catching up with the rising costs of the last few years. So, you know, last year our IT costs went up 11%. This year they're still going up 9%. We all know bursting costs are going up, chemical costs are going up. We've tried to give our employees a COLA every year to keep up with the market. Health insurance has increased 4% last year and another 7.5% this year. And so those are just some of the examples of rising costs. And then in conjunction with that, we lost our second largest customer last year, and that was a loss of $250,000 to our budget last year. And as of right now, that customer is still not back in operation. And so last but definitely not least is our very old system, and investing in the replacement of infrastructure is critical to maintaining the reliable delivery of our very important product. Oh, it's not working. So how does this impact our customers? Well, for our minimum bill customers who make up 70% of our residential customers, they will see a cost increase of $2.95 a month. And this is a cost of water of $21.38 a month. How does that look in comparison to the cost of a bottle of water?
I'm so sorry, I have to interrupt again.
Yeah.
It's doing the same thing it did the last time. He's just gonna fix it on the back end. It's only take a second this time, sorry.
That's okay. There you go. It's still wrong.
Cody, it's still doing the same thing. Sorry, for some reason our computer keeps thinking that there's multiple screens. We're not exactly sure why it hasn't done this before.
Oh, we're waiting. Jerry, how long have you been a trustee on the water district?
Excuse me?
How long have you been a trustee?
As long as I was on the council.
Okay, well, we're
13
still
years.
waiting for Bangor bottled water, okay?
Well,
I thought you were gonna get that done.
yeah, you need to get rid of that. Get yourself a. Bring that down over.
So, folks at home can see the screen, but they can also see all your notes and things. If you want to continue, while we continue to troubleshoot, you can, but, I'm not sure.
That's where all the trade secrets are.
Right?
You can just drag that down so that the notes are hidden.
Well, you turn notes off.
Yeah, we have the
Yeah,
notes.
I don't have the notes. I have my own. I reprinted them. So.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. That'll work.
Patty, do you know?
Okay.
Her Microsoft representative in Bangor.
Yeah, I think for time's sake, you can go.
Okay. So again, how does that look in comparison to the cost of a bottle of water? Well, according to the Harvard Energy and Facilities Department, tap water is 3,000% less expensive per gallon than a bottle of water. The average cost of tap water is 2 cents per gallon, whereas a bottle of water, average is 64 cents per gallon. So with the new increase, Bangor Water is still less than the average of 2 cents per gallon of cost of tap water. And then, our minimum bill customers will pay 70 cents a day for up to 75 gallons a day for their daily water uses, and that's after the increase. Bangor Water also provides the critical service of fire protection to the communities that we serve, which also will, be impacted by the rate increase as well. So for the city of Bangor, public fire protection is really important. We have a total of 1,095 public hydrants, and of those, 996 are in Bangor. So the Maine Public Utilities Commission allows utilities to charge up to 30% of their total revenues for public fire protection. Bangor Water continues to keep that percentage under half of the allowed percentage, with the increase will be at 14.8% of the total revenue for public fire protection. So what does this mean for the city's budget? Well, looking at it in dollars, the increase will be a quarterly charge of over 45,000, and then annually it will be an increase over 181,000. So with that, most of you probably know we have already filed the rate adjustment with the Maine Public Utilities Commission, asking for an increase in both our metered revenue rates and our fire protection rates. Bangor Water's 2024 budget has a revenue requirement of $9,552,918. That's an additional need of $1,092,227. If it gets approved by the Maine Public Utilities Commission, the proposed rates will be effective April 1st, 2024. And then just lastly for me, why is this increase so important to our infrastructure? Well, our rates are how we fund our bond principal and debt interest payments, and that for our major capital projects as well, it's how we fund our capital revenue account, which we use to fund major projects that are not funded by bonds. So
So without further ado, I'm gonna introduce Mary, and she will go over some projects we've just recently done, that we're currently doing, and that we will be doing, so.
Yep. Thank you, Holly. So part of the capital revenues that Holly mentioned that this rate case would contribute to, we do always fully fund 100% to our capital revenue so that we can pay for these kinds of projects. This is actually a photo from the Water Street project that was done last year. But we're looking right now into utilizing those funds to work in conjunction with the city to, while they're replacing their storm and sewer, actually right down here, down Cumberland and down to the Kenduskeag Stream. We have water main that's as old as from 1897 it was installed, so it's about time to replace that. And through these kind of capital revenue projects, we're able to partner with the city, with other utilities, depending on what utilities are doing what in the area, so that we can reduce our construction costs in total when we're partnered, which would include, you know, we're all digging in the same trench and you only have to pave once, instead of us going and digging it up again, which would also reduce any traffic disruptions and impacts to customers. So some of the projects that we have completed, our construction department this summer did work on Olive and Thatcher Streets, and we were able to abandon and replace a total of about 0.5 miles out there. All of that water main was 112 years old, so it was past its useful lifespan. We ended up laying new main on Olive Street, and there was redundant water mains on Thatcher Street, so we abandoned the old one and switched all of the services over to the new one. So that was done this summer. We also have been in the process of upgrading really all of the infrastructure around the airport. So we constructed a new pump station, which replaced our 79-year-old pump station on Main Ave. The new pump station is located on Corporate Drive. And that has upgraded the pumps that we have so that we can provide adequate flows and fill our standpipe, which is also under construction. The new pump station also has a generator on site that automatically kicks on, is run on natural gas. So that's been a really awesome improvement already with the storms that we've had and long sustained power outages. So we're able to continue to reliably serve water. So that was just a diagram of where these pump stations are located in conjunction. So the top one is the Main Ave crane pump station that we actually this week are gonna start working on demolishing. And the one on the bottom on Corporate's where the new one's located. So along with our new pump station, we did also perform a lot of pipe work, which you folks probably at some point were impacted by in the Main Ave area and over by the airport. So we were able to replace 1 3/4 miles of old pipe. And so we replaced old main with new main that also was sized adequately to provide adequate fire flows. So not only did we just replace old infrastructure, we also made sure that we would be able to continue providing public fire protection. So that included also replacing 8 older hydrants in the Venture Ave, Main Ave, Cleveland Street, Corporate Drive, and Outer Hammond Street area. So kind of fully surrounding the airport. And in that work, we were able to fully remove essentially from our system, abandon 0.7 miles of old pipe. And that's usually what we refer to as cross-country main, which is out in the field and serves no one except to transport water from point A to B. And that really was great to abandon that where we didn't need it. And that would just be further opportunity for leaks and more costs to go fix the leak. So that was completed this past fall. And the final phase of the project, so those were phases 1 and 2 to do the pipe and the pump station work, will be constructing a new standpipe. So we're going to be abandoning actually 2 of our standpipes. The top photo is our standpipe on Venture Way. The bottom one is on Hammond Street. And we're going to replace that with 1 standpipe, which will be a concrete standpipe, which has shown to sustain a longer lifespan and less maintenance. As you can see, the Venture Way needs a painting for a while now. And so that project is actually underway. This past September, we awarded bid to DN Tanks for the manufacturer to build the standpipe. They started removing trees and doing some site work in this past December, and we anticipate that the standpipe should be constructed and fully able to be used at the end of this fall. So all of the phases combined for this really important infrastructure work of the pipes, the pump station, the tank came to around $12 million. It's been funded by the Maine State Revolving Fund, SRF, which is a low interest loan, as well as we were able to get an ARPA grant for that as well for $2.5 million. And so the orange colored spots there where the circle is where our old tank is on Venture Way, the big box is where the new tank will be constructed. Those photos are not of our tank. We're not there yet, but that's just how that will look. It'll actually be very exciting to watch it be built. A concrete pre-stressed tank is pretty fun. So all of what we've talked about, and especially with those infrastructure projects that we have, are necessary to really keep to our mission to provide safe, reliable, abundant, and affordable drinking water. So thank you for your time, and we can take questions now.
Councilor Fournier.
Thank you, Holly, Mary. You didn't mention it's the best tasting water. That was last year.
Unfortunately,
Or the
Brewer
year
got
before.
it this year. We were in the top 5.
And I certainly get all the infrastructure, because I know it needs to be done. I know there's 100 miles of pipe that are over. Is it
Over
100
100
miles,
years
over
old.
100 years old?
Mhm.
So it would have been helpful to see the comparison with other districts on what the rates are. I mean, historically, I think the water district has done that. Question for you on the contingency.
Yeah.
How much of a contingency was put into the?
Yeah, so I know we had this question last year, and last year what we had decided to do was use our cash reserve as our contingency, because we had an idea that this second largest customer was having issues. So we did have to use our cash reserves. So there is a 2.5% contingency built into this rate. It's about $250,000, so to recoup the loss of that cash.
And the last question I had, I think it's the elephant in the room. Where's the general manager? And maybe that shouldn't be addressed to you.
Yeah, that's not a question for me.
You couldn't make it tonight.
And so I know the first one wasn't a question, but I did try to find the public fire rates for all the other towns and cities, and I could not find that.
Oh,
So I didn't update it. I wasn't sure where Kathy had gotten that in the past. And I noticed in her slides last year, the last it had been updated was 2018. So I will try to find that again before the public hearing, so that can be part of that.
yeah.
Um,
Did you want fire rates or water rates?
It was water rate.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just the water rates?
Yeah.
Okay, because
So
I
you
know
should be
that
able to
she,
go to the municipalities.
okay, I was gonna say, I know that she had the public fire in here, and I took it out because I couldn't find the updated rates, but
We can reach
I can
out to
look at
PUC
the-
as well.
I can look at the water rates too.
Councilor Trumbull?
A similar question about the contingency. You said this year, without that, without the rate increases, a gap about a little over $1 million.
Mhm.
So does this fill the gap and then some? Because, I mean, what's the projection in year, next year, the year after? Do you project you'll have some increases, continuing increases? And I know that on the minimum bill is 285 a quarter, what percent is that? Yeah, of
It's-
an increase,
It's the 16%
16%,
increase, yes.
that's not insubstantial.
Yeah, and so
16%.
it is 16%. It is prorated because our metered sales are billed in arrears. So the effective interest increase is 13%
Right.
overall. And then, of course, the public fire starts in April, so we don't have quite a full year of those as well, so.
And I haven't been to a rate case before, but is PUC gonna get this, say, that's kind of a hefty, I mean, 285 a quarter for minimum bill sounds reasonable, but I think I say, geez, that's a pretty substantial rate increase.
I came to Bangor Water District from, working with the state of Maine, the drinking water program. And I've seen much, much higher increases, and that's mostly for the fact that for so long, water systems don't put in rate cases. And then they have to go over the.
But that's why I was asking, next year and the year after, we're gonna be, you guys looking for another 15, or you think it's maybe 4 after this year?
I'm hoping it will drop down. The good news is that our bonds are gonna start dropping off
Oh,
after this year. So we will be putting more on for like the projects, like BIA expansion and stuff like that, but we do have some bonds coming off.
Does
So
this SRF bond that you just, is that already on the books, has it started paying up?
that one actually is not.
So that's
no.
gonna come on?
Yeah,
or the
those
other
ones are gonna come on. We have some coming
Okay.
off.
And
So-
is any of that forgivable, the SRF, do they forgive some of that?
So we had the 2.5 million in the
The
ARPA
grant, but
funds,
nothing's
yes.
forgiven.
No, well, so the ARPA 2.5 is actually a mixture of forgiveness and
Okay.
grants, so that's kind of how they built it.
All right,
in.
thank you.
Were those county ARPA funds or just
I think there's
Right.
federal.
State or
yeah.
federal.
state ARPA funds?
And
So
the SRF,
Mike-
I think with 1%.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and the first bond to come off, it was a general resolution bond, so it's actually at a higher rate, so that's good news. We've been waiting for that one to come off, so.
Yeah,
question?
just a comment. I think it's a rough conversation tonight. You guys like talking about this increase, and then prior to this, coming to talk to us, there was the conversation about building a new arena and rec, so it's a lot.
Following the theme of.
On community members, I mean, but it has to happen, right? It's,
Yeah, and, I'm sorry.
no, it's just like the timing, maybe just like, two tough conversations back to back.
And I will say, I did look back at some of our other rate increases, and I did see we had a 15%, I think it was back in 2005, 2009, somewhere in that area. 2 years ago, it was 13.9, so 16 is a little bit higher than we've seen in the past, but it's not unheard of.
So to what extent are you applying for grants to offset any of this? I know there's a lot of federal infrastructure dollars floating around out there.
Yeah, so I know, one thing that we are looking at the lead service line, inventory grants, so I'm not sure how much of that we'll be able to get. We did get it's an SRF bond, but it's 55% forgiveness for our vac truck because it was included in that lead service line inventory, funds. So other than that, we haven't really looked at, I don't know if there's anything else available that would be eligible for. But could definitely look to see.
Other counselors? Yes.
I just don't recall a double-digit increase.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, we had the 13.9%. That was the first year it came on. Last year was 9.8%.
I just don't remember that, that's all. I think we've always tried to keep it under 10.
Our problem is.
I'm sorry.
that, we
Excuse
can't,
me, sir.
oh, sorry.
Please join the table if you're gonna come up. Wait to be.
John
called.
Wallach, I'm on the board of
Thank you.
trustees. I just want to throw in, I don't know, if you caught it, but, we lost a major customer. It's hard to replace.
Yeah.
So think of us as a business, we have no way of increasing consumption. In fact, consumption's been going down steadily just because people have been more efficient with water and so on, so. If PERC comes back online or if the Hammond facility comes on, it'd be a big bonus for us, so it's hard to predict the future. I would say rates should be a little bit steadier once we compensate for the PERC
facility being shut down. So, and I know you led off with that, and that was important. I emphasize that a lot when you go public. Or not that you've already gone public, but when you have the hearing.
Just wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Yeah, Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
I got a question.
I'm sorry, we need to move on. We have a long agenda for the rest of the
Okay.
night. I'm sorry, we need to move on. Thank
Does
you.
anybody know the residents of water in this room?
I'm sorry, we're moving on.
Anyone?
Thank you.
Residents of water?
Sir,
No.
you're out of order. Thank you. We're moving on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Next on the agenda, yes,
Interesting how it all rolls tonight.
I know.
Downhill.
I'm gonna take you from the clean end to the dirty end. I'm of the rare opinion that it gets more interesting as you go. All right. Amanda Smith, Director of Water Quality Management for the City of Bangor. And I'm just here to do a brief overview of where we're at on the biosolids management in the state of Maine.
I'm sorry. Could you please take the conversation in the hall? Thank you.
We're gonna spend some time together at the next infrastructure committee meeting and really put our science hats on. This is just to touch base with you. We haven't spoken for a while since the biosolids crisis last year. And I think it's time to just do a brief update. Starting with the very basics. What is wastewater treatment? We think of it as what you envision there. People flush their toilet. There's a wastewater treatment plant there that protects the river from that flush. But in reality, it's a lot more than that. There is industry here. It is, for example, we have cheese making manufacturing here. So there's solids associated with that need to be cleaned before that water gets to the river. There are hospitals and other industry. There's stormwater and everything that comes with that runoff that is treated at the wastewater treatment plant. And one of the main treatments is removing those solids from the water. So we do that at a couple of different points throughout the process. To give you an idea of volume, we on average treat 9 million gallons every day. Out of that 9 million gallons, we remove 17 tons of solids daily. Every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that's, you can envision the mess that we're talking about here. That
The mess or mass?
mass.
Okay, like mass.
There is no storage at a wastewater treatment facility for these solids, so that's really important to know. Last year, when we had the biosolids crisis, it was very hard to just very quickly educate people last minute on how this works. And there is no place to take it and set it aside for a little while and wait for a place to dispose of it. It needs to be removed daily. It's biologically active. It can be quite an odor nuisance if we were to try to store it anywhere. And if it builds up in the plant instead of being removed, that will eventually pass through to the river. That happens within a matter of a couple of days to generally a week or so, depending on the weather. Prior to last year, prior to 2019, I should say, we disposed of it in two different ways. It could either go to the Hawk Ridge composting facility where it was mixed in as into a compost and land applied, or it was disposed of at Juniper Ridge landfill. And then I don't know if I have control over this. Let me see if I do. Sorry about that. So remembering the biosolids crisis, some of you are new, so we haven't talked about biosolids since last year. There are a few things that created a crisis last year. Never in the history of the city of Bangor have we ever gotten a phone call that said, we can't come pick up your biosolids and dispose of them. We just found ourselves suddenly one day without the ability to dispose of it. A few things led to the biosolids crisis. It was a combination of different things that were seemingly unrelated at the time. One, probably the biggest one was back in 2019, the state implemented PFAS screening levels for biosolids. So biosolids had to meet certain levels statewide in order to be land applied or composted. That began forcing more biosolids into landfills immediately in 2019. So a lot of a lot of this crisis began back then with more being diverted to the landfill. In addition to that, just before the crisis, there were a couple of laws passed. One, removed the screening limits, the screening levels and prohibited land application of biosolids regardless of what the PFAS levels were. Any municipal wastewater biosolids were no longer allowed to be land applied, period. So that left the city of Bangor with one outlet, and that is landfill, along with all of the other municipalities. At the same time, there were changes to the recycling laws, which seemed unrelated at the time, but it impacted, the combination of the two impacted landfill operational capacity. And what that means is biosolids are a wet waste. They can only be accepted at landfills if there's enough dry, bulky waste to mix in with it. Because if not, then it creates slope stability problems in the landfill. So having those laws, those changes implemented at the same time created an operational capacity where we got a phone call that one day they weren't going to take our biosolids. So to address that crisis, and the reason you haven't heard from me in a while on this, there were a couple of things that happened. The first thing, the first thing is DEP had created an avenue for hauling to happen to out of state or across our border to Canada. So that did provide some short-term relief very briefly. It also doubled the price of disposal for biosolids throughout the state. The next thing that happened was the state legislature passed LD 718, which put a pause on that initial recycling bill that was a component of the creation of that crisis. That pause, a substantial piece of that pause is going to expire in July of 2024. So it was a very brief pause in order to give the state, DEP, utility managers, landfill managers an opportunity to evaluate the situation and come up with other options. The other piece was this biosolids management study that was done by Brown and Caldwell. It was requested through the Department of Environmental Protection and the Maine Water Environment Association. And I wanted to go over just the high level results of that study. This just came out. They just wrapped this up at the end of 2023, just came out last month. The results of the study, essentially, they laid out short-term suggestions, midterm and long-term suggestions. At this point in time, there is still no alternative disposal for biosolids other than landfill. Landfill capacity is the number one concern. Landfills right now that accept biosolids are Juniper Ridge. They accept 80%. Crossroads landfill is the next largest, significantly less. And there are a couple of very small players. Juniper Ridge landfill at the current rate that it's filling will be closed for its permitted capacity. It will be closed in 2028, which is right around the corner. If they expand the landfill, they are in the beginning phases of requesting that expansion. It will close in 2038. That would provide an additional 10 years. Crossroads landfill in 2025 is slated to start a biosolids drying area. That will increase capacity statewide by about a third. They would not have the ability to treat 2/3 of the state's biosolids. Should Juniper Ridge close and Crossroads continue on, that would still leave a shortfall by 2/3.
Does that just allow them to landfill it without having to mix it with the trash?
Yes.
Okay.
For the most part, there's a lot of other operational considerations, but yes, it would no longer be considered a wet waste. So it would relieve the need for so much bulky material to mix it with. And then the really minor players, Heartland closes in 2033. They're very small percent. And there's a couple of even smaller ones. Next, Brown and Caldwell does recommend that the state invest in a separate study altogether to address bulking agents. And that's part of a broader conversation about recycling, what recycling is, whether or not out-of-state waste coming in and being processed could be considered a recycled component. And then pilot studies. They are recommending that the DEP invest, or the state invest in pilot studies for PFAS treatment. So we'll talk a lot more about PFAS at infrastructure, but it is important to understand that there is no treatment for PFAS right now. The technology is not there. It's not fully understood what the final fate of PFAS is when you try to destroy it in biosolids. So there is an investment in pilot studies needed. Many of them are still bench scale. There is a significant cost with doing a full scale pilot study. And those are and volume reduction. So, there is a recommendation that the state move ahead with a bond strictly for volume reduction, which would be drying facilities. That is something that I think that we're going to revisit and talk about probably in the very near future, as far as, looking at what kind of volume reduction would be available to Bangor, and economical for Bangor. And then, of course, the beneficial reuse of biosolids. The EPA is working on, hopefully by the end of 2024, potentially putting out screening limits for biosolids. And the recommendation is that if the EPA moves forward with that, that the state revisit their complete prohibition on biosolids. Because even with volume reduction and drying of solids, they're all still being landfilled. That goes against the state's preferred hierarchy. It increases greenhouse gases. It's not sequestering the carbon the way that reusing biosolids was doing, and still using up landfill capacity. Whether or not we continue to expand landfills, it's still going in there. So that's a really high level result of the study. And the reason I wanted to get in here and give that to you tonight is because I was informed that there was a radio spot recently on the landfill contract extension request that was applied for by Casella. Casella has requested a 6-year extension on the Juniper Ridge landfill operating contract. And there was a radio spot that was very focused on biosolids or sludge. Wastewater sludge is the term that's used in all the rules and regs for the state. There was a lot of emotion around the idea of extending a contract for the landfill. There was a lot of inaccurate information about wastewater biosolids and how that fits into the landfill operations. And the request for the 6-year extension is being put out for a public hearing on Wednesday night. And I plan to be there solely as a resource for biosolids information.
This coming Wednesday?
Yep, at Jeff's Catering.
Roger.
Question. Now, this is your first time hearing all of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're gonna share, I think, for those of you who were here last year, and Amanda did her science geek of how a treatment plant works.
Yeah.
We're gonna share that presentation with our 2 newer counselors.
Great.
So that at least gives you a starting point.
That would be good, yeah.
And as soon as we can, get the ice off the stairs and warm things up, we'll get the tour of the treatment plant scheduled. A lot of it is outside, a lot of it is on metal grates. I'm not a fan of metal grates. I didn't particularly care for it in good weather. I can't imagine what it's like in bad weather. That's right, Councilor Leonard was with me. He went up these things and I said, no, not me. I'm staying here.
It was fun.
So-
It was fun. I'll say that. Definitely have the school trips out there.
So,
And at our next infrastructure committee meeting, I'll be sharing with you, we just finished a 3rd phase of our PFAS study, where we've really been digging into the sources of PFAS throughout the city of Bangor. And so we'll discuss that.
So will you keep us updated on where the legislature is going and let us know if we need to provide testimony or make statements on any proposed changes to legislation?
Sure.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Is there a link people can use to get in on this next discussion, or whatever? That's for the link to get in,
They can come in on the public link.
okay, which is just not.
It's on our web.
Yeah, on the calendar, they can
It's
also
on the
go to
calendar.
YouTube. I think it's youtube.com/city of Bangor.
Okay, we're moving on to
All right.
the legislative session update.
So I just wanted to put a quick pin in. Many of you may recall that there was last year out of the legislative session, there was a request to establish a stakeholder group to examine the potential future beneficial public uses of the unused structure at the Dorothea Dix campus. At this point, there have been two of those stakeholder meetings. We've been notified that the stakeholder committee has completed its work. I've asked for some sort of kind of statement. When I went back and actually read the law that was finally adopted and enacted into law, it talked about that it was to look at unused structures. And the only couple of unused structures that are on the site are actually slated for demolition just because of their state. So I am still trying to get clarification from the state on that, but I just wanted to share that because I got that cancellation notice a week and a half ago, and I went, okay, no more meetings. So if I have anything more, I will let you know on that. The second item is upcoming public hearings. It is beginning to slow down at this point. These are typically the only hearings that are being held are for the bills that were recently introduced in the shortened session here. Tomorrow there is a public hearing on an act to fully reimburse municipalities for lost revenue under the Property Tax Stabilization for Senior Citizens Program. I believe that when you had your joint legislative session, I believe the state representatives and senators who were here chatted about the fact that the budget included a I believe it included a $15 million appropriation to reimburse all the municipalities. The municipalities have submitted requests for reimbursement in excess of $26 million. So someone within the legislature actually submitted a separate bill and is meaning to fast track it, pass it as emergency legislation so it would take effect immediately and municipalities could be reimbursed in the current year. So we assume that the council might want to support getting the money that we were promised. So we did include some draft testimony, and unless there is any concerns, we will go ahead and submit that tomorrow. All right. The second hearing that is tomorrow is LD 1298, which is allowing local option sales tax on short-term lodging to fund affordable housing. The bill as written would allow municipalities, if approved by local voters via a referendum, to impose up to a 1% local option sales tax on short-term lodging to fund affordable housing project. This is somewhat similar to a different bill that was submitted this session or carried over, LD 1893, except this bill significantly narrows the allowable use of funding. LD 1893 was voted out of committee, ought not to pass. Just from background, Bangor has long advocated for municipalities to have the ability to impose a local option sales tax. All previously submitted bills have been opposed by every state administration. With the need for housing being at the forefront of all levels of government, perhaps this bill has an opportunity for further action. But I just did want to weigh in. I would say in the past, when we've asked for a local option sales tax, it has been to reduce the burden on our property taxpayers. What we know is, as a service center, true, we get a higher level of revenue sharing, which is our share, if you will, of the broad-based taxes. But what we know is we do a lot of things that support what I'm going to call the most vulnerable, those who are unable to contribute through public taxes. And the best way to do those systematic programs is through the broadest tax base. And property taxes is not the broadest tax base that we have available. The state has always, regardless of the administration, has fiercely defended its right to assess sales tax only and has not really been willing to allow the municipality to do that. I think we did it in the years when municipal sharing was cut. I think we've done it in the years, we did it back trying to replace the Bangor Auditorium. Before casino came to town, that's what we thought we might be able to do, is to use a local option sales tax. So I didn't know how people might feel about wanting to submit testimony for or against that tomorrow.
Counselor Fish?
Yes, I'd like to speak out about this. I'm not in favor of testimony in favor of this. Matter of fact, I'm opposed to this. I know the Maine Association of Realtors, who I can't speak for, but they've been very aggressive in speaking against this as well. And the reason is, we feel that, this violates, one's ability to acquire and occupy and use and dispose of their real property, independently, because this focuses a lot of people that are doing bed and breakfast, campgrounds, and yes, Airbnbs, but a lot of them are small investors that typically buy a property, fix it up, and they bring people in that contribute to the economy of the town, part of tourism. And I think that where we just impose some regulation and permit fees, these are people, everyday people, that are just trying to work to make a living, and a lot of them buy these properties to supplement their income or even to supplement their retirement, because Social Security and other retirements are just not keeping up with the cost of living. So I think this greatly impacts a group of people that are just working hard to try to make a living. Also, I think that it negatively impacts tourism and sends a poor message to the local investors that we're not we're not corporative. We want economic development. We want to encourage people to invest, fix up some properties and invest in our city. And for the 1% that I think is coming back, it goes to the state and comes back to us, but it's regulated for, low income and subsidized income, which the municipality ourselves have got to participate in. I think the law read 50%. So, I don't really know where the tax benefit is. And I think that middle group of people that we're trying to focus on helping, that this hurts that group. And, we do want more resources for our homeless and low income. But I think that there are a lot of services, and I think the people that are just out there working every day and trying to make small investments for them and their family and their future, this impacts negatively.
Counselor Trumbull?
Why does the bill define short-term lodging? Is it just Airbnbs, is it by hotels and motels, and?
Bed and breakfast, small hotels, campgrounds.
It does, so it doesn't affect hotel
Airbnbs.
rooms. Okay. I mean, in the past, the city manager said, I've supported the ability to have a local option tax, because one, it was targeted it would benefit the people that were paying the tax, the people that were being charged, the tax was imposed. It was first to do a new auditorium, and then I think we were gonna do it to, help when we had a, Visitors Bureau, we were gonna fund the Visitors Bureau with it. So, I mean, obviously, housing is it's a priority this year for the council, but the limited use, it's just only allowed for housing. I just assume that we not take a position. I think it would be nice to have a local option, but I think we need a little more flexibility in how it's spent.
Comments from other counselors? Counselor Fournier?
Yeah, in my mind, I thought this was focused more on hotels, and if it was focused more on hotels, I would be fully in favor of it happening.
The
But
bill
it's not,
specifically.
but if it's not, I understand where you're coming from, and I respect that a lot. I thought it was more hotel, so that's where I was leaning. Yeah, I would probably be in favor of it, but
It specifically there was a paragraph.
Yeah.
That specifically said.
gotcha.
So this does not apply to chain hotels like Marriott or Hilton or,
You know, it specifically applies to short-term rentals, campgrounds, bed and breakfast, Airbnbs, small hotels.
other comments? I'm in full support of this. I think if somebody is coming to spend money in an Airbnb in Maine and they've decided this is where they want to go, an extra 1% on the bill isn't going to deter them from doing that. I think there are lots and lots of places around the country that have a local option sales tax on all kinds of different lodging, and it doesn't deter tourism at all. I'm not sure I understand the argument that this hurts people who are investing in small businesses, because the people who are paying the tax are the people who are visiting. So it is something that I think is desperately needed, is the ability for municipalities to have local option sales tax. And if it starts here, perhaps it opens the door for us to do it on other things as well. I realize that doesn't give the city manager direction.
But that's
one way or the
okay,
other.
we can just choose to go on to the next one if you'd like. We can go on to the next one. LD 2102 is a repeal, the law limiting the municipal property tax levy limit. This was affectionately referred to as LD 1. That actually came into being in 2005 under the Baldacci administration. It was kind of done as a multi-part legislation. It was meant to get the state to begin to increase its share of education costs, reduce property taxes, reduce government spending at all levels. But it was also following that they continued to reduce their share of revenue sharing, if you will. They continued to erode a revenue sharing for almost 2 decades after that. So what LD1 said was, in order for, they felt property taxes were too high. I don't think there's any council or elected body who wouldn't agree with that. They felt that I think the elected bodies needed to be, if additional state funding came forward, that you needed to use that state funding as an opportunity to reduce your local property taxes. You go through this whole calculation about your property growth factor, your income growth factor, and you determine how much, what percentage you can increase or dollar amount you can increase your property tax levy by every year. There were a couple of years, the law also allows every elected body to exceed it. You simply take a vote that you're going to exceed it. We did do that a couple of times where we had some significant fuel cost increased. I think it was 2007, 2008. Where we all of a sudden went to paying $4.25 a gallon in diesel. I can't remember the exact timeline. So we did go ahead and do that. Right now, we continue to do this. We are $7.7 million below our property tax levy limit. I don't think that we will ever likely exceed it unless there's something catastrophic. Part of this, every year you do vote when you pass the school budget. The school has to budget under what's referred to as the essential services and program model. And every year you vote to override the tax levy limit for school operations because there are a number of functions that are not wholly funded by the state or considered essential, like transportation, like extracurricular. So at this point, it feels very administrative. So I think there are finally some folks who would like to consider repealing it. I think, for anyone who thinks that an elected local body is not concerned about the amount of property taxes they have to raise every year. I think it's something you spend an inordinate amount of time talking about through your budget. I think all of your conversations are really circled on how the cost benefit to our taxpayers, recognizing that, there are so many demands on resources at this point. So I'm not sure that this current legislation that we're required to do is actually resulting in the change or whatever. I think the change is really dictated by the local elected officials.
Counselor Leonard.
I just have a question. So I'm noticing it's in an LR status right now. Is this the final language of the bill that you know of?
Yeah, LD 2102. It's at LR 29, it was LR 2929,
My
it's now
apologies.
LD 2102.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions on that?
Would folks be good with me, with us opposing that? I think you have the ultimate authority over raising taxes, or not. Okay.
I don't see any doubt.
All right, thank you. I also included a whole list, so this is the list of all of the LDs that we thought may have had a municipal interest at one point. Obviously, depending on the concept draft, but depending on the title, you can't always tell intent. So we just kind of put it on the watch list. A lot of things have played out. So it did provide an update as to where every legislative request, LR, or legislative document, LD, stands at this point in time. One other point to consider before we kind of go through these to see if anybody has any questions or concerns is it is expected that the governor is going to release her supplemental budget in detail later this week. The current estimates is that there is $265 million of funding that needs to be appropriated, either through the Appropriations Committee or through the governor's budget. The governor was very public in the fact that she feels putting $100 million of that money into a rainy day fund as state revenues level off is important. So that leaves in essence $165 million for supplemental appropriation in the current session. It's unclear how much the governor's supplemental budget may be. And it is unclear what will actually fall, how everything will play out in the legislature as it relates to the final appropriations. So anything that has a fiscal note will have to be part of that 165, if that's what we're talking about. I think the big ones is a lot of what's happened with climate actions are really sort of not as directly related to the community anymore. There are still a couple of items for general assistance. They have tried to, as is not uncommon, try to consolidate bills. So lots of times, several legislators will put in bills that are very similar. So they are beginning to consolidate some of those, and we're seeing that. There continues to be a lot of support for housing. I've listened to some housing committees. The concerns always are the amount of money that's attached to it and recognizing how limited the resources are going to be. There are any number of items that have not. I've tried to break them out. Bills that are awaiting additional committee action, scheduling, public hearing, or a work session. So we have some housing, human resources, municipal solid waste, PFAS, public health, bills that haven't come out, public safety and taxation. The ones that ought to pass are a lot of them coming out of committee now are in essence creating working groups for the coming year. So it isn't clear kind of what the impact is that going to be. I did try to indicate where things had limited impact, I believe, on the city. I believe a lot, for us personally, I think we're most concerned about what they're going to do, with the emergency shelters and the general assistance pieces. I think that most directly, impacts our community. The emergency shelter bill, there's, still is about, $12.5 million is what they're looking at right now. And the general assistance bill, which would increase reimbursements to municipalities to 90% out of the existing 70%. So, as well as to pay certain costs at 100% and begin to pay administrative costs, some share of administrative costs would be a great win for our taxpayers. Those to me were sort of had the most impact for our taxpayers and what we're challenged with here in our community.
Questions and comments? The moratoria on emergency shelters. I know that was originally drafted as communities if you were or greater than 30,000 people.
Yep.
They've changed it to 20.
They have.
Do we know how many more towns that picks up?
They didn't
Before it was
say
just
during
three.
the workshop.
Okay,
But what I will say is I don't believe that there's a municipality in Aroostook County that tops 20,000.
that's,
And that would mean that all of Aroostook County could adopt a moratorium to say we're not gonna allow the opening of emergency shelters. And yet every one of those municipalities needs to address the needs of stray animals.
right.
Doesn't say much. If you would like us, we can still submit testimony after the fact. So if you would like us to officially oppose any caps on moratoria on emergency shelters, we can certainly do that. I don't know why it should only be limited to communities of 20,000 people.
Right,
If there's a need, if there's a desire,
right.
it should be allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, would you like you can submit something?
Is
Okay,
there anyone opposed to that? Okay.
all
We
right,
have direction, thank you.
okay. Take one away, pick one up.
Anything else on the legislative update?
No,
All right, last thing, city manager updates.
sure, so, you may have seen in the news, President Biden has approved a major disaster declaration for several Maine counties. Due to the storms the week leading up to, Christmas. Penobscot County didn't qualify for assistance to affected individuals, but federal funding is available to state, tribal and local eligible governments and certain nonprofits for repair and replacement of facilities. So we will be eligible for all of the work we did to support the debris removal and disposal. So we will be working on pulling that together and submitting a FEMA reimbursement for that. In case you didn't see, I kind of knew about this and I didn't realize we'd posted it. You may have seen some, you're gonna start seeing some information on Public Works in partnership with Eastern Maine Community College is going to be hosting an educational demonstration to identify and trim brown-tail moth winter webs. They're actually going to be an in-person event next Tuesday, 12/20, 2/20. Good gracious. I stayed up last night and watched this almost 3/4 of the Super Bowl because I still couldn't make it to the end.
You missed.
It was still too late.
Yeah,
I got to watch it this morning.
That's Taylor Swift made the winning touchdown.
So, I'm gonna look at our public health director's last night meeting here with us and just let folks know that, as you know, you've had the opportunity to meet your new public health director, Jen. She's gonna be starting with us April 1. In the interim, Jen Doyle, who is our public health nurse, is gonna be filling in and serving in that capacity, because I think it's important we always have that kind of position. And then kind of a follow-up, last week, our public health director did her swan song of an update, but I believe Councilor Yakabaga had some additional questions or had asked some additional more detailed questions, so I just wanted to give an update. Councilor Yakabaga had some questions about the number of individuals utilizing, for example, nighttime warming shelters. At this state, it's 93 individuals between the Bangor Area Homeless Center, the Mansion Church, and the Brick Church. We're averaging 93. There is a daytime warming shelter on Center Street that is averaging about 50 individuals a day. What we can say is from having the warming center meetings, what we've been able to, the community and the agencies have responded to is either employees within those. So for example, the Bangor Area Homeless Shelter has employees. The rest are mainly staffed by volunteers, but some of our those agencies within our community who are contracted to work with the individuals who are unhoused are actually visiting all of those sites at night and during the day to make sure that we're getting folks into coordinated entry. Coordinated entry is, if you will, sort of the gateway to getting some additional housing services and support. And I just wanted to follow up on that. Part of that, obviously, housing support is a voucher. I think you may, I'm not sure, but some of you may recall last spring as we were working through and really focused on, the Valley Avenue encampment. We actually came to a point where there were no more shelter plus care vouchers. We had extinguished what we had available. We'd extinguished what was available from balance of state. That still is relatively limited, but we do go through, they do it case conferencing every week. And so as vouchers free up, we are reallocating those vouchers. But as a stopgap, we were also using, because we've continued to work with individuals, obviously, as a stopgap, we were also using the state's BRAP program, and BRAP stands for Bridging Rental Assistance Program. Last week, we were all informed that this program is also now oversubscribed. So voucher applications would only be processed for what is defined as priority 1 and 2 populations. And priority 1 and 2 populations for this program are individuals who are leaving a psychiatric hospitalization or those leaving incarceration. Individuals who are unhoused are considered a priority 3. So we can still complete applications, but they are now being placed on a wait list. As vouchers become available, they will be utilized. We continue to work behind the Hope House. It has been a struggle here since. We did not have, with sort of our HUD friends here, we had a lot of people kind of contributing. The number of people who've been able to contribute have been smaller. But we did pick up quite a bit of progress last week, and we are bringing more folks in. The number of individuals on that site continues to ebb and flow. There are currently 45 individuals, 34 households. Of those, what we're noticing over the last 2 months is we're seeing more people show up. So as we house people and people are able to find a different alternative, of those people the individuals, for example, of the 45 that are currently here, 12 of them are new to the site since November. So we were actually, way down to 30 individuals that we were working through with. About a third of them already have housing vouchers in place, and outreach works to continue the balance, works with the balance of individuals to try to identify additional resources, get them housing vouchers, and or find alternatives. So we were making good progress, and we're still making good progress, but we continue to have inflow.
Councilor Yakabaeva?
Yeah.
So my question is about, I think Patty mentioned 125 unhoused individual, right? Like around that number, maybe last time you presented to us.
Yes, so I think it's sort of Debbie's ebb and flow picture that we think we've got the number, and then we go back next week and the numbers changed a little bit. We've helped some people, or people have moved in, and so
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't give you a more.
It's totally fine. About 15 who use daytime shelter, that's all, like
50.
50.
50.
So does this include the people who use the library?
No.
No. So do we have an estimate how many of them at the library?
No, it seems less when I go in there, but I don't know that.
We don't know. Okay, so we don't know where the rest.
I don't know where the library is. I just checked with the shelters following your additional questions. Yeah.
So still we don't know where the rest of these individuals,
A lot of folks have, so for example, when we talk, so we know we've housed individuals, for example, we know exactly who we've housed. For example, from the encampment behind the Hope House. We also know that we know of 3 individuals who have gone to live with family members in other areas. So there's any number of reasons that number fluctuates.
Yeah, and those who obtained housing are still in those. They were able to maintain housing?
Yes, with continued work and effort on lots of people's part.
Yeah, support, services,
Support,
and so you follow up, you keep following up.
We try, or other partner agencies do it. It's not always just us, but it could be, other agencies. Yeah, case managers and, yeah.
Thank you, like your last report.
Yeah. Is there any theme or pattern to where the new arrivals are coming from?
So it's not always it takes a while to build enough rapport to actually get that information. And at this point, we have sort of this last group of, that have come in are very reluctant to engage. And actually will not even
Open the-
acknowledge that anyone is there trying to make contact with them.
And
So-
that's not unusual. That takes a while.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
every week,
Mhm.
there's a hi. So work continues.
Other questions? Okay, anything else?
No, you have like 20 minutes.
You're adjourned. Thank you very much.
We can turn the room.